A very good evening and a warm welcome to the Saturday's edition of Diplomatic Faces. Well, in Diplomatic Faces, we do always bring in a well-known diplomatic face. So, it is indeed an honor to be here with His Excellency Tunja Osuada, the Turkish ambassador in Sri Lanka, joining with us today in Diplomatic Faces. A very good evening to you, Your Excellency. For a person to join a particular field or a particular sector, there are various things that we have to look into, and definitely there are different motivating factors as well. What actually motivated you to join the foreign service sector?
Actually, I decided to become a diplomat in my very early ages. When I was at the high school, I was very much interested to foreign countries, languages, history, geography, other cultures, other nations. And I decided I should do a job, I should do a profession that fits my personal interest. And in this, as a result of this, I decided to become a diplomat. And throughout my education at the high school and at the university, I was focused to this target. And at the end, I reached my goal.
So it's definitely always a passion that someone has a particular passion to go forward.
Absolutely. That was my childhood dream.
Your Excellency, being an ambassador definitely requires extensive traveling. And if you could describe your day-to-day affairs, particularly in this role and especially being in Sri Lanka.
Well, I am now almost 24 years in the business, in this Ministry of Foreign Affairs, working as a career diplomat. Throughout my career, I worked in several countries. As you know, we are changing every 3 or 4 years our residence, and we are moving to another country or going back to our own country. And through that thing, we are kind of becoming a world citizen. We can adjust ourselves in a very short time to the country that we are living in and functioning as we were there for many years. If you are asking me what is the day-to-day program of an ambassador, well, it varies. It varies a lot, depending on the development, on the political developments, of the economic developments or social developments of the country. But there are also certain regular things that we are doing. And after I get up, after I came to the embassy, of course we are receiving our correspondence from our headquarters, getting instructions and follow. Then we are reading the newspapers and following the news about to keep us updated what's going in this country. If there are meetings, I am attending meetings which are organized by the host country or by another diplomatic mission. But the work doesn't end up usually like at 6 o'clock what the other public services. The work goes all the way up to sometimes up to the midnight, because we have certain obligations, representative obligations. We are participating into several ceremonies, receptions, or meetings, also even after the regular working hours until late in the evening. And then I am coming back to my home and resting a little bit, and the program of the next day goes like this. That includes the weekends too, actually.
Okay, so it's a very hectic and not a very easy schedule.
It's a lifestyle. There is nothing like in diplomacy, in the work that we are doing, there's nothing like a private life. We are putting our job into our priority, and we are acting accordingly. We don't have the luxury of saying, oh, I don't like it, I don't want it. There are certain things that we have to do it, and we are doing it. Obligations are there, and we have to follow up these obligations.
Your Excellency, how would you describe the relationship that Sri Lanka has with Turkey?
Actually, we are having a very deep-rooted relations with Sri Lanka. Although we opened our embassy only in 2013 here, but the official relations between then Ceylon and the Ottoman Empire goes back almost to 150 years ago. Almost 150 years ago, the first honorary consul of the Ottoman Empire was assigned to Gaul. Lebna Marikar Efendi, he was the first honorary consul, and then later on his son took this position. And then Muhammad Makam Markar, the well-known Sri Lankan politician and businessman, was also the third and the last Ottoman honorary consul in Ceylon in Sri Lanka. After the independence of Sri Lanka in 1948, we established our diplomatic relations and continued. Since then, we are having brilliant and very good political and cultural relations with Sri Lanka. And in the year 2012, Sri Lanka opened its embassy in Ankara, and in 2013, Turkey opened its embassy in Colombo. I can describe the relations between Turkey and Sri Lanka as a wonderful relations. We don't have any single political problem or any issue. The only thing what we need to improve is our trade and economic relations. And we are actually focusing on that sector more. And we are trying to improve the bilateral trade and the economic relations. Turkey and Sri Lanka is supporting each other in international fora. We are supporting each other in our candidacies in international organizations. And we do have also something common with Sri Lanka. We do understand the fight of Sri Lanka against the separatist terrorism very well, because Sri Lanka went through a very difficult time for almost 3 decades.
That's right.
And Turkey is struggling with similar problems also in his region. That's why the fight against terrorism of Sri Lanka is very well understood and very well studied in Turkey, and the same way the Sri Lankans are also understanding our position when we are fighting against separatist terrorism.
Your Excellency, in the diplomatic field, definitely they have their own pros and cons, especially when dealing with different countries. In your aspect, what are the issues do you find most pressing and that you need, that you think that will require your fullest attention to the particular set of problems?
On the bilateral terms, as I have mentioned, politically, we don't have any single issue with Sri Lanka. And contrary, we are supporting each other in the fields of candidacies and other issues. When it comes, and we do cooperate in various fields when it comes to the fight against terrorism and so on. The most challenging part is actually maybe to improve the economic ties and improve the trade relations between two countries. The business communities in respective countries don't know much about each other, don't know about the capacity and the potential of each other. Maybe the priority of our embassy should be of introducing Turkish business world to their counterparts here in Sri Lanka.
It's definitely nice to hear that Sri Lanka has a great relationship with Turkey. But however, Your Excellency, you did mention about the trade ties that Sri Lanka currently has and that there is definitely room for improvement. So what measures do you propose to further strengthen the ties between Sri Lanka and Turkey in terms of trade relations?
Actually, after I arrived to Sri Lanka, immediately we start to work on that. There's a mechanism called Joint Economic Council, which is led by the Minister of Economies of both countries. they met after long period last year in Turkey, in Ankara. They came and they had extensive talks how we can improve the economic relations, the legal base to improve these relations, and listed up a kind of to-do lists. And in that framework, we have to have signed several agreements with Sri Lanka, like the avoidance of double taxation or promotion of the investments or assisting in custom matters, etc., etc. Okay. These things has to be finalized. And we take further steps into that, and they are almost ready to be signed. Next year, in 2018, a delegation from Turkey under the co-chairman of the Turkish-Sri Lanka Joint Economic Council will visit Colombo, and they will help the second round of talks, and they will see where we are going. Our ultimate target is to improve the trade volume between two countries by 2020 up to $500 million. If we can reach this target, that will be a fantastic thing, that will be a marvelous thing, and this economic and trade ties will bring us more closer.
Tourism in Sri Lanka was definitely a problem over the past couple of years due to the Civil World War. And now, with the current rules and regulations, they're planning to increase tourism by 5 million by 2020. So, Your Excellency, what could you propose to increase the number of tourists from Turkey who are coming down to Sri Lanka? And do you think that we can reach this target by 2020 as well?
Let me give you some figures. In 2015, almost 45 million tourists visited Turkey, and Turkey made out of this activity approximately $35 billion. Turkey is one of the leading tourism countries in this world, among the first five. And the tourism industry in Turkey is very developed and is one of our major income sources. Turkey has these various things like sea and sand, culture, food, natural beauties, historical sites, etc., etc. And not only these things, also the health tourism, conference tourism, leisure, or this types of tourisms are also available in Turkey. When we are coming back to Sri Lanka, if I'm not mistaken, last year 2.2 million tourists visited Sri Lanka, and out of this 2.2 million, approximately $2.5 billion income has been earned by the Sri Lankan tourism industry. For Sri Lankan tourism, there's a big room to be improvement. But how to make that thing? Yesterday, I was in a meeting, this Rising Stars Awards by the Sri Lankan Hotel Associations, and actually at the speeches there, the Honorable Minister for Tourism put very rightly certain targets for Sri Lankan tourism, what need to be done to improve Sri Lankan tourism. Actually, the ideas are there, and the ideas are right. The only thing is to implement these ideas. And if Sri Lanka is going to implement these ideas, I am sure, as other countries, Sri Lanka will profit a lot from the tourism, and it will become a tourist destination and a big hub.
So basically, the ideas are there in place, just that it's a matter of implementing
Absolutely.
them and getting
this
into.
This is what I am seeing.
That's right. Your Excellency, tourism is definitely one aspect, and the other aspect would be the cultural relations that we have with Turkey. How would you give your thoughts on that, on cultural aspects?
Sri Lanka is a beautiful island with a huge variety of cultures and traditions. dances and food and other things. And I think in this sense, Sri Lanka has a lot of things to offer to show this richness to the world. In this framework, actually we had a traditional dance group from Sri Lanka last year in Turkey. They came and performed in several cities of Turkey and received big admirers and they were very successful. From the Turkish side, we are participating since last 2 years to the contemporary art festival Colomboscope, which is organized in Colombo and is a kind of art festival for the contemporary art. And last year and this year, we had Turkish artists which performed here and showed their art work. Through this type of exchanges, I am sure people-to-people contacts, relations will improve. But of course, this is not enough. We should do more. We should introduce more Sri Lanka in Turkey and more Turkey in Sri Lanka.
So Turkey and Sri Lanka looking forward to improve that in the future as well. Your Excellency, to join any particular sector, there is a certain set of protocol and there are certain things that a person should look into. So what advice would you give for a person who's actually looking into join the foreign service sector?
You have to have, to be successful in any job, not only for the diplomacy or foreign service, whatever you do, you have to be really want to do this. You have to be really interested into that. And it has to fit to your personal character and your area of interests. I would say if a young Sri Lankan woman or young Sri Lankan man is interested to become a Sri Lankan diplomat, he has to or she has to ask to himself first this question: am I ready to give up everything what I am having in my hometown and ready to travel all around the world, entire my life, and am I ready to become a world citizen? First of this. Second of all, am I ready to be working long hours to reach certain goals, and am I dedicated enough? If you are answering yes to this question, then you should look to your own qualities. Do I speak foreign languages? Do I know enough about the world politics? Do I know my own country's history? Do I have a ability of empiric thinking, of scientific academic way of thinking? Am I ready to sacrifice myself for the interest of my country? If you are ready to answer these questions, then you might be an eligible person for the diplomatic service. This job is nothing, from the glamour from outside, you are thinking, oh, they are having a nice life and they are enjoying the parties and having nice houses and this. This is just a facade. Beyond this facade, there's really very hard work, and a lot of sacrifice. And persons should be, who is interested to become a diplomat for his country, they must be patriots. Without patriotic feelings, without patriotic substance, you cannot become a successful diplomat. And what is a must for a diplomat is the knowledge of history. Without knowing history, you can be also not a successful diplomat.
So it actually needs a vast area that
Absolutely.
they have to look into. It's not only working in a foreign service sector, but also to look into different languages and different historical aspects and also dedicating themselves. Absolutely. I believe, like Your Excellency did mention, it's not only for the diplomatic arena, but definitely it also requires for many other fields as well that they should be passionate about what they're actually looking forward to. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for joining with us and sharing your thoughts on Diplomatic Faces, and it was indeed a great pleasure to have you on Diplomatic Faces with us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap of Diplomatic Faces. So till we meet again with another new Diplomatic Face, this is Vidushini signing out now, and have a pleasant evening.